You're welcome. I'm really glad for us to connect in with everyone today. I know there's things happening in the world, and it's really lovely that it's possible for us to have a bit of social commentary about things. Of course, everyone would agree that when the Army Corps of Engineers or anybody would straighten out a river, for instance, they probably have done something very unnatural. They can have not considered how the water turns, like Schauberger can have given people deep insight into how the water turns as it flows and this sort of thing. There's so much which is not known, but that when somebody tampers and things, for instance, like with all the waters that flow up in the sky, with these HAARP and atmospheric heaters, ionospheric heaters, how do you know really what you got after that? You know, I think that it's really like Romans having drank out of lead, Lukey. But you know, it's amazing because you've got things really going on, haven't you? With all of this, you've certainly got HAARP's use. For weather as a weather weapon, and certainly information about how that can be being used as sort of false flag to bring in sort of martial law and that sort of thing. But HAARP use certainly could be used, and how could anyone rule out the fact that this Frankenstein storm that's occurred, and then all of the statistical coincidences that you're sort of talking about now, but I think that all these events that are happening right now are sort of like a theatre of operation, a bit for the count, and there's sort of certain preparation for the anomalous sort of events that's to come. You know, certainly thermal zones have been shown, and you can have a look on the net to see this, but there's plenty of open sourceness to show that these wands are being used, and that thermal zones have been shown radically to have non-natural sort of patterns of movement, of winds and weather patterns, and certainly that's been shown over various regions. And there was one classic example that really was shown quite well over the western United States, and how scalar wave could also be seen, how the symmetry occurred in a manner of not something natural, and then how it was that high and low pressure zones appeared in places which would not ordinarily really have appeared. So absolutely, you know, HAARP is being used, but you know, it's sort of like an environmental toxic overload of chemtrail and things to have over the sight horizon sort of for missile defense and things. And communication and scalar wave, go through a Faraday cage, and so it's a sort of a communication that goes right through everything, more or less, to different sort of a technology. And these things are being applied by the military-industrial complex, really, which really is just one plantation owner, really, basically. But this, you could say, really is to dominate, and then all of the whole thing is about domination over there, domination over here, and then how can we tolerate that? And so that's the theatre, and that creates sort of like a trauma reenactment syndrome for people. But could we say that perhaps 78% of the people perhaps on the earth at the moment are not well and are in danger because they really are not really eye aware? But let's see. You've got certainly reasons, you know, for all of this that you could think about. Certainly, HAARP use to affect this Frankenstein storm, really, and you've got world government as a sort of we've got all these catastrophes and we need to have somebody like a world government. So that's a part of it. There's multiple purposes can be seen. Of course, there's the rehearsal for the lockdown, and it is amazing that in, of course, 2007, there were 10,000 quality of life crimes that went unreported that year, just because a lot of money was spent out on lockdown, and the quality of life of all of the city residents and everything was just lost for all that money that was spent in this lockdown. But certainly you could understand that there's the global New World Order, and then the re-election of Barry Suharto, which is Obama, and you've got sort of also another phenomenon going on a bit, which is sort of really like a catastrophobia, really, sort of like catastrophe and a problem, and then somebody will really create a solution, you see, the government, or the hand above the government, really. But, I think that there's certainly a serious environmental toxic overload that's going on because of all of this technology of over-the-site horizon and spraying the air with all of that metal, to create an electric sort of like a plasma, so that this sort of technology can work. Yeah. So you've got these sorts of things going on. You've got, let's see, you've got the Peter principle, of course, of the count, where a person really is, we could never say a person or just a few people could sort of really be in charge of everybody. That's ridiculous, But that's the sort of what's gone on. But HARP certainly has been seen to be being applied and used, and there's multiple aims of Sandy. Certainly FEMA getting underway ever more, and federal law, coming over, and martial law, and these sorts of things, and practice trial sort of run, so there's sort of multiple aims. But HARP, people say that there's going to be some sort of HARP-triggered sort of event in 2013 beyond, and that this sort of is something which is sort of preparing. And then there's the story, of course, a lot of the calamity and people's focus on all of that, which a lot of it sort of is can be distracting, Lukey. But Nibiru or Planet X and parts of the eastern states at the moment, apparently they're sort of under martial law, like perhaps some parts of New Jersey or something. But it's really a bit of an experiment to see how that can work, I guess, martial law in place, and where there's no civilian democratic rule. But the first step really of all of these things sort of is, with the theatre of operation, is to create sort of like a martial law and to be able to sort of have lockdown. And it's amazing that America, I guess, is the place where that seems that all of that is being practiced, all this sort of lockdown and this 2012 endgame sort of natural catastrophe, and using these weapons to create something sort of politically correct that looks like a bit of a natural catastrophe. But 2001, FEMA formed this sort of an emergency sort of response, apparently. But it was because people can know certainly that September 11th was a false flag. And then Hurricane Katrina and 2005 sort of earthquake, and there's a lot of evidence to show symmetrical seismic activity that's not natural, that shows some sort of artificial energy and things. But the count sort of is sort of a controlledness, and HARP is owned by the hand above the government, the count. And there'd be something like maybe 17 HARP facilities and some movable ones floating and that. And it's really it's like a script to create sort of like a worldwide police state, and this is sort of really all these bits and pieces that are coming out at the moment is a part of a theatre of operations of control. And so the first thing is sort of really a test for martial law, you see, and that's sort of happening perhaps in the northeast part. And then the second part of the theatre of operations really is to secure sort of a greater sense of approval rating and things, which these storms and things certainly have done that for Obama, which October the 22nd, I think it was at 46%, and sort of low, and then by October the 27th, 2012, everything is steered back up, and he's in a bit better position and things. But false flag on October the 22nd, Sandy and Isaac, of course, with the GPO of Florida, it shows a steering. And then it's just a funny thing, of course, but that as you observe these, the movements of these storms, it's just amazing that they could have gone 12 miles, the centre could have gone 12 miles here, 12 miles there or something, but the whole thing seemed to be just directed toward where the most calamity perhaps could basically sort of occur for the size of the storm. But you've only got a few sort of people that really were killed by these events. But that events around the world where these things have occurred, where earthquakes have been and tsunamis and things, you've got 150,000 people perishing and things, but that it's more sort of yellow-brown sort of skin, and some people call this sort of a friendly sort of a fascism, perhaps. But certainly at the moment that Haiti becomes discovered of riches, the Hispaniola Island, then Haiti. Why is it that all of a sudden it just sort of becomes discovered of its riches and things, and then, bam, I guess the people didn't really want to be involved, perhaps with a hand above government, and they just sort of got a bit of an earthquake there. That's interesting idea, but it seems like that makes sense, that can have occurred, and Haiti sort of is not necessarily friendly to fascism, but you've got a lot of these people, honest to God, that are not easily able to sleep and things, and they've promoted themselves to incompetence, and benzodiazepines, addiction with a lot of these people in charge. It is interesting, a lot of them actually are under pharmaceutical sort of and drugs themselves to be put to sleep at night with chemicals and that, but they can't sleep unless they take something, Pharmaceutical sleeplessness and spasms, apraxia and aphasia and things, these are all conditions which a lot of these people do suffer from, and most of these leaders, Lukey, they're very, very puffy. It just is really, I don't know necessarily that there's anything sophisticated necessarily, having to be really anywhere, But anyway, no one could rule out the fact that unnatural circumstances have been incurred, and that absolutely there is an environmental toxic overload at the moment, with all this chemtrails and stuff. You there, Lukey?
Yeah. Hey, I don't know, I hope I'm not changing the subject, but is any of this having to do with the fertility cult? The martial law and all that?
Could we just say that we have a remnant of a convention which has arisen as a result of ways of going and customs ways of going about thinking about things, and then that being put. But that you could certainly say that all this fertility cult of the past that is present today in creating armed prostitutes to commit legalized sin, and then all the paradigm of a controlledness to cause a slave and cause roles to be is all really part of this quite a bit. You could certainly say that. Let's see. You and I really are all self, as one, really, and I aware, as I am, is yourself, company. A worthless title, Lukey, and a degree only affirms a vague understoodness, a vague understood essence, really. But being on the edge and being educated, you're really able to see self inside everyone. And these are ways to be in eye awareness where it's the end of sufferedness. And but that the people on the earth would really be availed of living life more abundantly, being more in eye awareness. But as one's social sort of position and title and degree, it's a matter certainly not of education or education, but probably more head-educatedness. And all of that head-educatedness and social engineeredness can other than have allowed this originalness inside you and all of us who are listening. Eye awareness is respect in keeping self company, and inner self is eye welcoming, you see, company, who is caring. You could be awakened much more so of an inner spiritual energy that we have available to us. Biophotonic sort of potential field exists, Lukey, and then the sublime levels of this spiritual energy existing more in an inner peace that's within and inside you, and this is where you can find refuge in I, and this is learned by eye awareness, which is equivalent, really, we could say, to a union of the heart and the mind, a joining of the heart and the mind. But eye awareness, you can respect company as self-worship, really. To welcome company is worshipping, and I am dwelling in how you are keeping self-company. But, sin and sinning would have been to have hurt, you see, and to have been about hurt. Yet I aware is sort of virtuous, assisting, keeping company, and then this is the end of jealousy and hate and happiness experienced even now, as no one ever has, you see. Eye awareness really is attaining an honest action which is being performed as kept company more is pleasing, you see. And it's amazing that someone either causes your electrics to be strong or weak. And certainly for me, people could ask me why I do this, and I certainly, what comes up to me is I woke up and a long time ago, and I could hear people crying, you see, and I could see the rivers weeping. So that's the reason why I do this. I don't feel like I'm unique from anyone else, not at all. And it is a fact of sufferedness of my boy having his father lost to him, and the metaphor of this in the world, really, But eye awareness really is this union more of the heart and the mind, this is the language of peace, where two negatives are not being applied to make a positive. But religion, where we could talk about the fertility cult and religion or the convention where we are right now, where he's stripped half naked and she's covered, and all this sort of convention of the prostitute and love's work and loveless work. But religion is the submission to authority for some sake of having certainty, and to the degree to which the submission to authority have become a dogma. There's two errors really, which happen a lot in this convention and all these religions. And one is that the original teachings, that they certainly, I can see, have been contaminated, and most all of these religious teachings and things have sort of really been magnified by the ego. And eye awareness really is educating people more to be able to be living life more abundantly. So the two errors that I can see in religion really is, one, there's an original teaching contamination, and that's been magnified by ego. And then the second is really that there's just simply a gross distortion, actually, of the doctrine itself, and confusedness of things on that level. So then a lot of the religions have ended up being a controlledness and more and having some commercialness of it. But all religious teachings, certainly, most all of them all over the earth, are non-violent primarily, even though some are violent to animals. They all do teach non-violent, sort of peaceful means, and everyone really has something within their religious or spiritual teaching, which is about the path of least resistance. And then all religions sort of have a base which is to do more with unconditional love. So there's some eye awareness really is a common thread, and that all these religions are like beads on this one string that we're talking about. See, but it's a challenge to be able to focus and keep your focus on what you have as an outcome in your life, and to not be problem focused, which is sort of focused on what's missing, or what's wrong, or what is negative. And then if it's a problem focused, then that's just more sinful itself, on shame and guilt and triggeredness of 10,000 things, and a disruption to ease people ordinarily are feeling. But personally, and I can see a lot of exploitation of things which is just really trivial, and all of us sometimes, other than remembering that a person is involved and is not is only equal to another person, and certainly should never be joined with an organisation in people's thinking, or that somebody as a person could be joined, have come up against something which is a phantom, and that all of us can agree that that is unlawful. It's unlawful that a person could come up against a phantom which is not even a person. But a lot of exploitation of triviality is incurred at the expense of ignoring the thrust more of what we're talking about here, which is more eye awareness and being eye aware, which is more one living more without sin. And it should really be said that if someone is living this way, which vast majority of people are not, of course, one without sin sort of should be the person that could cast a judgment first against another. So we should leave Julian Assange alone and these other people, because certainly the organisations, and if there is a person that's passing judgment somewhere there, are they without sin themselves, so that they could actually cast this judgment? But a beautiful, beautiful lotus flower, which is so clean and beautiful, it just rises up from the roots of the bottom of a pond where there's a lot of slime and mud. and comes up out of this very dirty, sully place, very clean. And it's one of the very first plants to rise when water subsides from the land. But can you discern truth more from falsehood? You see, if you more are eye-aware, you're gaining the ability to be able to do this. And then leaders, a good, strong leadership, people really do love. They have more serotonin after connecting with people such, and they're electrically strengthened. Your best friend and people who really are around you caring about you, they strengthen your electrics. People who are being suffered, who are participating in protected disclosure and conduct, that we all can have a better way to be and can have sacrificed a bit of themselves because we can see that our brethren could be better off. I think that these are people who really do strengthen our electrics, and we really care very much to connect in with people like this. But it is interesting that a lot of the leaders in the media and things, when people are tested, they test negative rather than test positive, for the person's name. Truth is this which is really mutually beneficial, and we should be focused on what's mutually beneficial. So it's possible for us to discern truth more from falsehoods and things. But we're living in a world of a birth of innocence where there is a freedom of negativity, and that this is filled more with joy and love, and then all else really is a distortion and disease and misinformation and just all sorts of belief systems which are really not about eye awareness. But eye awareness that we're talking about in our program, and I'd encourage people to listen to our other programs and things, really is like a software program being input, just like Pyro being slipped into the computer and clearing up the head and clearing away anything that could have been viral, not meant to be there, sort of thing. But the language of peace is framing things positively, and if the topic is hygienic, framing it positively, I'd say I like being hygienic. If I frame it coming from amygdala and tegmentum function, which is aversion, then I would say I don't want to be unhygienic, and that's two negatives. You've got to have 78% of nerve function at the axon hillock to pass everything on, and you've got inhibitory and excitatory neurotransmitters, and so these are the things that are going on in consciousness for you to be able to pass something on to be good behaviour or good being, about saying no to harmful things and that sort of thing. But do you really feed your heart energy that's equivalent to love? Or is there a reptile fedness of no real cared neededness, which you and I and humans, we have a perfect reptile brain within us, and it's perfectly intact, the same as it is a reptile, but then we've got a mammalian brain, an emotional brain, and that birds and mammals have to have learned how to look after their children to survive. And so we've got areas of our brain very much that's evolved in caring, but that this could have been short-circuited in whole brain functioning by aversion, aversive feeling, and a repugnance and avoidance, and dissociatedness and fragmentedness can have neurologically inhibited the frontal cortex, which is this prefrontal cortex area, which occupies quite a large portion of our brain in relationship to other animals on the earth. This prefrontal cortex is a caring for the young, whereas the reptilian part of our brain is not a real caredness much, but is a fight sort of response is available. But the prefrontal cortex, Lukey, is our executive guidance housed. It's our ability of the faculty to inspire, creative influence of the future, and altruism and generosity. You have to be generous, you have to have a virtuousness, and you have to have lucidity, because otherwise you could be just giving things away to pearls to swines. But a lot of this teaching can only be perhaps received as a result of a person having pity and feeling some pity to be open. Because as we can feel some pity, of course, we can be open, and there's things perhaps that we can be unaware of, and we're opened ourselves up to what we can be unaware of to have a greater awareness. But childhood relations with their caregivers is a lot like a larger country with smaller countries, larger corporations with smaller corporations, a scale of economy of a city versus a small business owner. And these are relations like a parent and child and adult relations. But childhood relations with their caregivers influence actions of these children and organisations. And socialisation, expectations, an attitude, an emotion, and a habit, and whether a person feels secure or insecure, it's equivalent whether or not the child remains integrated, or a country or as a people are able to remain integrated versus no longer being integrated, you see. So we care very much that people remain integrated. We care very much that the infrastructure that exists, we're able to be supportive of, and we can grow what we have toward a sustainable future where we, the people, own the growth of the money supply, and the age of account is gone. And then as the age of account is gone, the count, and these are people who can assist to help this movement, this eclipse movement, because it's a grassroots movement, and this is a movement which is really from the people up. And because what we're talking about can't really come from the top down, except the stewardness to assist to help the grassroots level grow from the bottom up. But where there would have been insecurity, where countries are supposed to be communicating together, there could be a real lack and isolatedness, as we have with North Korea and Cuba and Iran, and where polarizedness can have occurred. You've got bogeys and things created to fuel the coffer of the bank, and you've got the black hats and the white hats, and then none of us should get caught up in any of that, but that to have an awareness beyond, because history shows that sometimes these people all just shook hands after killing each other sort of thing, and a lot of it has occurred this way and seems senseless, absolutely senseless. But childhood relations with their caregivers influences their actions, and socialization and expectation and attitude and emotional habit. And certainly when Dakota was put to be abandoned and even put through situations of learned helplessness, there was not a soul, a person to stop that. It's a phantom as a machine, and no single person is in charge, not like a parent. So insecurity ever creates ever more lack of integratedness, and then you've got a little connection between the frontal cortex and the brain stem. But as you're listening to these programs, I care very much that it's possible for you to find refuge in I, and this I awareness that we've been educating people more about is more about the language of peace, Lukey. And neurological diversity is equivalent to whole brain functioning, where you have an access to all your senses, and you're no longer just being in auditory internal dialogue, talking, and feeling about that, but that you have the ability to be able to exit into vision. Oh, I see what you mean. And you go from kinesthetic auditory to vision, and you're using a complement of your senses versus having had a sensory system deletion. But there's three parts to our attention. And then, you could say that patterns that are not eye-aware can have been put on children to have grown up to be adults, and a lot of these people are growing up, and then they have a very serious conditions that relate to giving attention to things. And as a neurobehavior physiologist, I'm not sure if there is another neurobehavior physiologist that's in the media that is talking about human behavior and politics and things. But you've got three parts really in neurology that can be looked at as far as attention, a person's attention is concerned. And certainly we know that there's attention deficit disorder and degrees of disorders that relate to attention. But the first really is being able to have attention, is to be able to retain and hold on to what it is that you actually are doing in the moment. A lot of times over, because of chemistry and because of a brain processing itself, persons can have other than learned or are having ease of ability to be able to retain and hold on to focus and keep a focus. So if someone talked, it's possible to keep your eyes softly on your focus. You didn't need your eyes to hear. But where your eyes were darted to hear something that you didn't need to see necessarily, and your eyes went off your outcome. So that's the sort of thing that's going on a lot. I'd like for us to get a bit more into behaviour, but I'd love just to keep our program fairly simple. We can get through a few things here, and those of us that are listening and tuning in, and then pictures and things can assist to help us learn more about this and imprint this. But the second part of attention is your ability to be able to continuously update and be observed to note if you've achieved something or not. And this is sort of like a part which is all to do more with attention and how much attention is existing in the component that's to do with a growing awareness and ecologically sensing things as you're having your focus and attention to update and this sort of thing. So that's another part of our attention. How easy is it as you're having a focus to continuously be able to update versus getting stuck in the one and not being able to necessarily change that? And so then the third component that's to do with attention really is what is it actually and what degree of attractiveness and attraction and interest do you actually have in this? Are you moving toward the things which is pleasurable, or are you moving away from something aversive? The degree to which something is more motivating you versus just moving you, the more that something is causing you to grow, learn, achieve, and be recognized, you've got motivation. And then if it's just satisfying some sort of hygiene need, it might not necessarily really be something which is motivating, but causing you to move to get things done. But the brightness of your being really happens as a result of how much inner calm you have, how relaxed your shoulders are in life. And then when you communicate, are you communicating with a face of ease? And how much can I feel you are caring about me and caring about people? But 78% has to be present there neurologically, we've been talking about, so all or nothing phenomenon for a electrical impulse to be passed on through the nerve cell. So you've got deliberate intention that's equivalent to being able to see, to feel, to hear, to see pictures or something in the future that remind you of what you care for to be achieved of. And then you can have the body sense of your teacher and awaken and hold tight to the feet of this person. You can have 5 teachers that you can become. But that, as you sort of have a more deliberate intention of a brightening of your mind, all these things become more reestablished. And then you could be, your intentions can be becoming more reestablished. And also you can have an awareness of a default mechanism where if you're not achieving something, you can be aware of this. And so these are things which, if possible, are components of attention. And But to have attention, you've got to be in uptime. You've got to have proper brain function, and then a lot of people are not showing they have necessarily good reflex and brain function today because of toxicity and then all the social engineering that's going on that caused people to be fatherless and only raised by one parent, and then a lot of dysfunction in society. But a well-formedness in our statements, Lukey, are positively framed, they're ecological, they're sensory-based, so, it's based on who, what, when, where, and how. And then within what's said, there's something which you could be aware of inside that knows whether you've achieved this or not. So this is sort of more well-formed statements. But otherwise, error really is in the programming. If I say, I wonder how much change can occur today, there's so many presuppositions in this. And then if I had said, how can I help you, there's a couple prepositions, presuppositions which are fairly weak, actually, and that you would be accepting just in the way that I asked, if you needed assistance. But heaven really is between two children that are playing, and heaven is a state of being inside, and it's a state of I inside you. That's what heaven is. You there, mate?
Yep.
And as the mind, so awareness is beyond these three states of sleep to wakefulness, which we can have an awareness of those two states and that we were in those three states. But eye awareness is really more where your mind, as you're going through your day, is more asleep. And this is wellness. The thinking that you're doing is causing enormous amount of energetics of itself, and this is very, very superficial and disruption to the ease we ordinarily feel. And as you're in your playful self, it's sort of more timeless, mindless, and it's beyond ordinary time. But as the mind is more asleep, these three deep insights, in attention, become more insights, in attention, become more insights, in attention, become more insights,